Hi, good afternoon. My name is Joanna Nelson, and I'm with the Economic Development Department for the state of New Mexico. And you have joined us today for a webinar series on updates for federal and state business assistance for businesses that have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. We will be recording this session. It will be posted on our YouTube channel. You can access that the recording by going to YouTube, searching New Mexico Economic Development Department. We also will send out a link to the recording as well as the presentation. You will be able to ask questions as you go. Please type those into the questions hand box to the right hand of your screen, and we will take those periodically throughout the session as well as at the end. We did get your questions when you registered, so we will be reading off some of those as well. I'd like to introduce the Cabinet Secretary for the New Mexico Economic Development Department, Alicia Keys.
Thank you, Joanna. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar. This is just one of a series of presentations and public outreach efforts that the Economic Development Department is doing to help businesses through this COVID-19 health emergency. In the past week, we've talked about our loan program, helped lenders, and we've answered questions for businesses about PayPal and getting registered for our new Buy for Tomorrow Today website. Please look for those recordings and all of our information on gonm.biz. The presentation today is super important because we finally have the federal piece of the puzzle in place, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which is now law and rolling out today. As part of that program, which we call CARES, some $350 billion is allocated to small businesses for various assistance in maintaining workers on payroll. So businesses now have more options. This is an evolving process, so we want to do our best to provide up-to-date information through these types of webinars and also our website. We know a lot of you are struggling, and we are here to help. We have 5 people on staff that are answering the phones and connecting you with regional reps. So please reach out to our office. All of our cell phones are on the websites. So thank you for joining us. I have to apologize if my dogs start barking in the middle of this. So everyone, please excuse me for that. Today we have a lot of experts from several state agencies and the federal government. I'm going to go ahead and briefly introduce them and then ask them to say a few words. From the Office of the Governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, is our Chief of Staff, John Bingaman, and John Schlegel, the Governor's Small Business Advisor. We're lucky to have Matt Gomez with us today. He is General Counsel for the U.S. House Committee on Small Business, and he helped craft the CARES legislation. Mr. Gomez will brief us on policy in the context of CARES and the next step for Congress. We also have Cabinet Secretary Bill McCamley of Department of Workforce Solutions, who is going to discuss the extended unemployment insurance provisions and the new workers that now qualify under CARES. We will then have a few brief questions for Workforce Solutions and also for Matt Gomez, if anyone would like to ask. And then we are going to go on to the U.S. Small Business Administration State Director, John Garcia, who's going to go over the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which people are calling EIDL, and update us on the other SBA loan programs. Then we will have those needing technical assistance with SBA applications can turn to the Small Business Development Center, and that is located in 19 communities around the state. Their state director, Russell Wyrick, is here to discuss their work and go over their services and how they can help. Joanna Nelson is going to be subbing for Donnie Cantana from the Department of Finance and Administration, and she's just going to give a 1-minute talk about recent updates to the Community Development Grant Program. And finally, there is help from the nonprofit world, and Bill Smith of the Santa Fe Community Foundation will present on the All Together Fund. So before we get started, I really do want to thank Joanna Nelson, the EDD Strategic Program Coordinator, for organizing this, and to Mark Roper, our Finance Division Director, and to John Clark, our Deputy Secretary. As a reminder, this presentation will be posted on EDD website, and that is at gonm.biz. We also have a really wonderful state website, which is newmexico.gov. It has current and accurate information on the COVID-19 health emergency program. So really quickly, because I know everybody's already seen this for the past few weeks, I did want to remind everyone of our two state programs, the first being the COVID-19 Business Loan Guarantee Program. And this program works in partnership with a lender where the state provides a loan guarantee. This information we have given webinars about. It is also on our website. Reach out to us. The second program we have was authorized by the governor, and it allows us to use our LEADA grant program to offer no interest loans. It's a little bit more specific because statutorily it's only assistance to manufacturing companies that receive at least half of their revenue from out of the state. But if that is you, Mark Roper is on the line. He can take questions about that. You can call him or email him. So we are going to start right now with John Bingaman, who just has a few words to say on behalf of the governor.
Thank you, Secretary Keys, and thanks to your entire team at EDD. Thanks to everyone for joining the call today. As we all know, we are living through an unprecedented public health emergency. Nobody has lived through anything like this in over 100 years, and I've been reading a lot about the flu of 1918, and in some ways I think this is even worse than that from everything I can find, or it's shaping up to be. As you would expect, the administration is focused squarely on that public health emergency, procuring PPE, expanding bed capacity, and enforcing our social isolation guidance and orders. And there is some good news around that appears to be working. Our new cases are increasing. They're continuing to increase, but they're increasing much slower than they would be if we weren't all following that guidance. And so now is a critical time to redouble our efforts along those lines. We have 44 testing sites up around the state in 22 counties. We are ahead of most other states in terms of testing per capita, and the governor believes more testing to identify and isolate sick individuals. But following up on the public health crisis that we're all living through is an economic crisis, and I don't think that's too strong a word. This has really never happened before, even during the Great Depression, to essentially press pause on a huge swath of our economy. Unemployment claims last week completely overshadowed anything we experienced in the Great Recession. And so we are living through an unprecedented time. We are very grateful as a state that the federal government in particular has taken action. The CARES Act is the largest stimulus program in the history of the United States, and we're grateful that our delegation and others in Congress and the president moved so quickly to enact that legislation, and eager to hear more about it today. We are attempting to respond at the state level as well with the programs that the Secretary mentioned. We also have a couple of other loan programs through the Small Business Investment Corporation and their lending partners at the Loan Fund and DreamSpring. The State Investment Council is launching a program called the New Mexico Recovery Fund soon for medium-sized businesses that need larger loans. And we're looking for ways to expand beyond just loans, but to get more money in people's pockets that doesn't need to be paid back to help them with business continuity. So we're developing ideas and looking for your ideas as we try to help keep our businesses afloat so that when it's time to reopen, we can all get back to work and get our economy growing quickly again. So with that, I'll pause and thank you again, Secretary, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, John. We'll go on and move to Matt Gomez, who only has a few minutes with us. So after he makes his presentation, we'll ask Bill McCamley to make a presentation, and then Matt and Bill will take questions. So Matt, can you give us the 10,000 foot perspective?
Sure, happy to do so. First of all, thank you to Governor Lujan Grisham and her staff and Secretary Keys and the New Mexico Economic Development Department for organizing the webinar, and to Congresswoman Deb Haaland for her leadership and for including committee staff so that we can share some of our insights. Very briefly, to those businesses and constituents out there listening, please know that Congress, your members and their staff have been working diligently and feverishly over the past 3 to 4 weeks to prepare a comprehensive bill designed to provide relief. It was a large bicameral and bipartisan product to provide much needed relief for small businesses. 10,000 foot level, among all the programs that are included in the CARES Act, the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP or the P3 program, was designed to be the main avenue for relief for small businesses. Designed to be a public-private partnership as a sub-program within SBA 7A program. The latest on that is that the implementing regulations were released last night in an interim final form by the SBA. So we can expect lenders to start making some loans as early as today. And I've already heard from a few lenders who have begun making those loans. Notably, those loans under the regs will be made on a first come, first served basis. We learned that last night. So bottom line recommendation is to those folks who are interested in taking out those loans, please talk to your lenders and local banks, credit unions, CDFIs, other lenders as soon as possible. I have been engaging with lenders of all sizes and sorts, and it's quite uniformly the message that I'm hearing is that funding is likely to run out relatively, I don't want to say relatively soon, but definitely before the June 30th deadline. So to the extent that you have an understanding of kind of what your capital needs are at this time, this is the time to start talking to your lenders and your folks in your community to see if they are participating. All current 7A lenders are eligible and make loans, and they're expanding eligibility for lenders. So this is the time to, like I said, reach out and see what can be done there. I think the House and Senate moving forward will be moving at a different pace, due primarily, I think, to the fact that the House is constitutionally designed to be a much more speedy body, and the Senate is designed to be a much more deliberative one. So know that discussions on both sides of the Capitol and of both sides of the aisle are continuing to take place, but that timing for next steps is still up in the air, especially given that Congress, at least the House, is currently in recess and will be at least through April 20th. It's uncertain whether that will be extended. The Capital Region, the DC area, is expected to be a hot spot for COVID-19 during the summer. And from a public health perspective, it's probably not a great idea to have members from all across the country flying into a hot spot, doing business in very close contact with each other, certainly closer than 6 feet, and then getting on airplanes and flying back to their respective districts. So I think that as an institution, there will need to be hopefully some reforms regarding remote voting or proxy voting, or ways that the institution itself modernizes, given that we're in the midst of a public health crisis. From the, like I said, 10,000 foot level, that's kind of my message. And along with the one, I guess, important update from, like I said, from last night is that, again, first come, first serve for these loans. And not to create a panic or a run on the banks, but the time is now. Don't delay. If you have a banking relationship with your lender, now's the time to pick up the phone and call her or him and see what can be done. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. We didn't realize that. So that's really good information. We will get that out. Cabinet Secretary Bill McCamley, are you on the line?
Yes, Madam Secretary, I am.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and talk about the updates with Department of Workforce Solutions?
Sure. So we have been making it a practice to update our data for the week starting on Friday morning. So it's actually appropriate for us to be here today. So from March 27th, open of business last Friday to close of business last night, we had 28,000 or so new first-time unemployment claims. That was actually down from 32,000 the week before. So one could guess that, you know, a lot of the folks that were laid off from movie theaters and hotels and restaurants and such all were getting in at the same time. That may or may not be the case, but that could be what's going on. And so we could see a continued decrease for the next couple of weeks in first-time claims, but we're going to take it from a week-to-week basis. We do have about 44,000 people that are certifying right now for unemployment benefits. So just because you put a claim in doesn't mean you get one. As an example, we had a lot of self-employed people put in claims this week because they heard about the bill that passed in Washington, which I'll talk about in a second, but they are currently not yet eligible for unemployment. So the staff at New Mexico Department of Workforce Solutions that were around in 2008, 9, and 10 during the height of the Great Recession remember that the most people we had on unemployment at any one time was between 50 and 60,000 people. The issue is it took a couple of years to get there from the good economic times in 2007 and early 2008. We look like we might get there in about 4 weeks. And so the amount of volume that we're getting in terms of phone calls and applications online is not anything anybody's ever heard of before. However, if we start seeing first-time applications go down over the next couple of weeks, we can definitely see the number of people on unemployment being in that 50 to 60,000 range. So once again, it could be more than that. We're just going to have to take it week by week. In terms of the CARES bill that was passed last Friday, the one I just talked about, yes, it does two things for unemployment. First, it allows for everyone who is on unemployment to get an additional $600 for every benefit check that they get. So if you're getting $400 a week, which is kind of in our range, you will be getting $1,000 a week for, I believe, 13 weeks. You'll be eligible for that. We also are going to start allowing people who are self-employed, contract workers, gig workers, anybody who kind of is, as an example, a Lyft driver, a contract massage therapist at a spa, musicians, those type of folks onto the program. However, the message that did not go out from Washington, even after the bill was passed, was that you can't just turn these programs on like flicking a light switch. We need two things. Number one, we need direction from the Federal Department of Labor on the specific rules that they are going to want us to follow when making these programs work. As an example, if I'm a self-employed person, I'm a food truck owner, and I'm going to apply to get into this, what is called pandemic unemployment assistance. The federal government is going to want that person to provide some tax documentation, but we don't know what kind of tax documentation that's going to be. And so we don't have that information yet. We're going to need that and a bunch of other details before we can get our own systems ready. We thought we were going to get it yesterday. We did not. And we are still pushing pretty hard, the federal government, to get us those rules so we can then do the second phase of that operation, which is getting our own systems up and running. We're going to have to change our software and give training to our staff so that when people call in or hopefully go online to fill out these applications, we can process them as quickly and efficiently as possible. So we expect, we're having a go date hopefully in the mid, third week of April range, but we don't know that yet, and we don't want to give anybody any, dates that they can rely on because we just don't know what we're going to get from the feds and how long it's going to take to update our system. But Madam Secretary, that's kind of where we're at right now. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions anybody has.
Great. So I'm going to ask you some questions that were sent in when people were registering, and Joanna's also going to throw some out for you and Matt of people typing them in right now. So we'll start with a few which are workforce related. This is a question coming from a viewer. How can we help our staff or former staff check the status of their unemployment claims? And let's start with that.
Yeah, so first of all, we are encouraging people to go online as much as we can. 95% of our claims have actually happened online, and it's pretty easy to do your weekly certifications online. As has been widely reported in the media, our call center has been inundated. Last Monday, we actually had about 700,000 calls during the day, about 500,000 by lunchtime. And so we are trying to get everyone to use our online resources as much as possible. We've invested heavily in that system, and it seems to be holding up pretty well under a lot of strain, whereas other states have not. So you should be able to encourage them to go to their online accounts and check the status of their claim. I will say this, we have a process called adjudication, where when you file a claim, we have to go through the procedures and make sure people are following the regulations that are set up to get unemployment. We usually do this on a account by account basis. We're trying to put in what we're calling a mass adjudication strategy, where we can put them out in chunks, because that's going to be the only way we're going to be able to get money out to people. And we're starting that project this week. So if people have had claims that are still on hold, that's probably the majority of the reason why.
Okay, great. Now we have another question from another caller. They are a 1099. They file a 1099.
Yep.
Are they entitled to unemployment?
So that's what I was just talking about. If you're a 1099 worker, you're a contractor, you are not entitled to it yet. That is going to be that pandemic unemployment assistance program I was just talking about. So in a few weeks, after we get direction from the feds and after we get our systems up and running, we will be widely announcing when that date is going to be, and hopefully we will be getting some instructional videos for how people who are 1099, so contract workers, gig economy folks, can apply to get in. But we're still a few weeks away from that.
Okay, if FTEs had hours cut and they're collecting unemployment, do they still get 80 hours of paid leave?
The way that we are interpreting paid leave is that if they go into your wages, so if I'm basically cut because I have to quarantine and I was going to make $400 a month, right? You would hopefully be saying that the sick leave that was coming away from that would be $400. That does mean that someone who is filing for unemployment can file for what we call partial benefits if they were entitled to the full benefits before. So the full benefit that someone can receive every month is $461. So if I'm getting $400 in wages and compensation from anywhere, be it paid leave, be it from a side job, be it from whatever, then I should only be able to get $60 of unemployment. If my paid leave actually amounts to more than $461, then people shouldn't be getting unemployment at all, because the benefit actually is less than the amount of money they're being made. That's actually considered fraud by the federal government. You're not supposed to be making money and unemployment at the same time unless your hours are so low, you fall below the maximum threshold.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if somebody this is another question very similar, and if an employee makes $500 a week, he or she will now get 300 plus 600, or is the 600 added used to enable the payment of full wage?
Okay, so we are, I still think people, let me rephrase that. We're still waiting for guidance from the federal government on that. But what I believe is that you have to get into the basic system, which means you got to fit into that under $460 a week, and then you'll get the 600 on top of that. Now, once again, we may get direction from the federal government that is not going to be the way to go, but that's what we are assuming will come out of this.
Okay, great. Joanna, are you getting any other questions on your side?
Sure. One came in about, is it possible to check on an unemployment claim? How would they go about doing that?
Right, so that was the first question I just answered. So if you go online to your online account, you can see what the situation is. And once again, if it says that there are pending issues, it means that some of our folks are looking at some of the details regarding the claim. Once again, we're going to be putting in what we call mass adjudication to be able to hopefully allow more of those folks to be able to get benefits. If it says on hold, a lot of times what that means is there is a waiting week. So when you apply, if you applied last week, this would be, and you got accepted, this would be your waiting week, and then next week you would get benefits. So a lot of times when it says on hold, that's what it means, and it should be on schedule. I will say one more thing. The federal government has asked us to waive the waiting week, and we have it in state law, but we've gotten okay from both the Speaker of the House and the Senate leadership to kind of waive that and then fix that waiting week in the next legislative session. So that's one of the things that we're looking at changing in our mechanisms. But our IT mechanisms are very complex. They tend to work pretty well as these things go, and changing them requires a lot of work. And so we've got a lot of stuff on our plate, but we're working very, very hard to get these procedures in place as soon as we can.
Wonderful. Thank you, Secretary McCamley, for joining us. Joanna, do we have any questions for Matt Gomez before he hops off?
Yes, there was one that came in, Matt. Can you speak a little bit about some questions came in about if you could explain where folks go to, what lending institutions are participating, and if there will be an expansion on SBA lenders, just adding more clarification on where folks can go to access the SBA loan program.
Sure. So, PPP loans will be delivered through the 7A framework. So all current, 7A lenders are eligible to make PPP loans immediately, and they will have delegated authority to process them. The language of the bill also opened up the program to new lenders who were not already within 7A on a temporary basis. So to the extent that you or the businesses have banking relationships, they should start there. The other resource I would point folks to is the SBA District Office Resource Guide for your respective area. I believe the District of New Mexico is considered a single district. On the website, there should be a PDF resource guide, and that resource guide has a list of all SBA lenders who deliver 7A in the state. It's usually like on page 29 or page 30, but that is available online, and it has, like I said, a comprehensive list of all the 7A lenders who are in the program, and all of them should be eligible to start making PPP loans today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt and Secretary McCamley. We really appreciate both of you spending time with us. You are welcome to stay, but we also know that you guys are super busy. Next, we would like to welcome John Garcia, who is our State Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration, and also Russell Wyrick, who is the State Director for the SBDC.
Yeah, thank you, Secretary Keys. Again, it's an honor and privilege to share some thoughts and comments with your listeners and with all of our team members that we're working on. As you know, the SBA has been diligently working on this since day one, when we all went into a bunker mode and trying to stay safe and distance ourselves. March 16th, the state was declared an economic disaster area due to the COVID-19. And at that point in time, all the counties were declared by the governor as part of the SBA economic injury, which qualified all counties, all businesses throughout the state to qualify for our low interest long-term economic injury disaster loan, which is being administered by the SBA disaster office. What that loan is about, it offers up to $2 million for small businesses that are currently having economic injury due to this COVID virus and have shut down, or they're letting their employees go and they have loss of sales and loss of income. Also, the payments for this particular loan is deferred for 12 months. It's a very simplified process, and this has been the last 2.5 weeks that we've been dealing with this, which seems like maybe 2.5 to 3 months, if not longer. We're extremely fast track. We're inundated, like you all, with phone calls and and comments and emails and conference calls, webinars, Zooms, you name it. We're trying to get the information out. As a result, a lot of our small business owners that are being impacted, they've been filing under the www.sba.gov/disaster website. I've got to tell you that application has evolved from what it first was, and it's evolved 3 times to now a very streamlined a process application that takes maybe 15 to 20 minutes to fill out. And that application then goes online and it goes to our processing disbursement center at Fort Worth, Texas. It's assigned a case number. They work on that, and then a loan officer starts working with the client on that application process. It's taken about 12 to 15 days to get it through is what we're hearing. And keep in mind, the SBA hired on 500 people from FEMA, and now they just recently, last week, hired on 7,000 more people to handle the call-ins and the processing. So they're starting to get these applications out, and we're just asking everyone to be patient. And we're all in the same game together, and we're trying to be patient and advocating and making sure this thing gets out correctly. In addition to that, week before last, they added a new element to the disaster loan, and that's the economic injury disaster loan advance. That's up to $10,000. It's part of the same application. And then when it's approved, it's used mainly for payroll and other operating expenses that can be forgiven. And that seems to be trying to get cash into small businesses' hands immediately. They still have to go through the application process and get that online. We do have a 1-800 number we're asking people to call if they have any questions on that. And it's, if I may say, it's a 1-800-659-2955. Again, 1-800-659-2955. And or they can call my office, 505-248-8225, and we are returning our calls as quick as we can get them. In addition, there is what's called the SBA Express Bridge Loans. This is a loan that's up to $25,000. It's an SBA Express lender that is for temporary loss of revenue, and a lot of small businesses are also working with their lender on that particular bill. The one that's up on the plate right now that everybody's talking about, of course, is the one that was announced and launched last Friday, 5 working days ago, last Friday afternoon. I say it like that because the ink is still wet, and I'm trying to highlight the fact that this thing it's brand new, the ink's still wet, and we're trying to make sure the SOPs and the guidelines that are going out to our bankers is correct, and that the applications and the funding are correct. The interesting thing with this particular loan that was announced, and I think Matt Gomez said it earlier, it's unprecedented. This is an unprecedented type of public-private partnership that's assisting small businesses and accessing capital quickly. This isn't business as normal. This is very different than what we've ever done before, and we're asking our banking partners, our 7A banking partners, to team up with us. And it's not like they have to. It's those that are choosing to. Of the 1,700 approved 7A lenders across the country, and of our banking institutions in our state, we've got roughly about 40 banks in New Mexico that's listed as a 7A lender that are participating. A lot of them are still waiting for some stronger guidance, and it's coming down through their national associations, and we are still getting some guidance on that. Yesterday when this morning when the application was launched, but yesterday people were filling in the application they had. Well, since then the application has changed. There's a new application out there. It's more streamlined. It's a little bit more clear in what the applicant is filling out. And our banks have started taking in these applications. Secretary Keys, the information I got from DC so far, over 4,000 triple Ps have already been submitted, and that equates to about $1.4 billion. So over 4,000 triple P loans have been submitted, $1.4 billion have already been accepted, and we have about 400 plus lenders that are participating at the national level. This was dated about 1 p.m. today, DC time, which means 11 o'clock this morning, our time. So I think the money's going to go fast. Yes, and it's first come, first serve. We have our bankers working on loan applications right now. As they work on them, they're texting us or emailing us on some questions that they also have. But the $349 billion is going to be let out to small businesses. And what's important about this loan is to help small businesses with their payrolls. And I want to stress that because we are getting calls from some small businesses, can I use that for anything else? I said, yes, you can, but it will not be forgiven, and you have 2 years to make the payment on it. But this loan is a loan that will be forgiven if you're using it for your payroll. And that's the key thing. That's why this loan came about, to keep people employed, to put money in their pockets still, even though they may be teleworking. And it's also to help the employer hire his employees back. We don't want to lose these employees, nor do we want to close these businesses down. So we're doing everything we can to keep putting money in the small businesses' hands. It's a 100% guarantee from the banks. As our administrator, Jovita Carranza, is saying, and she's been pushing and working closely with the Secretary of the Treasury, is that this loan is 100% backed by the SBA, and we're providing it to small businesses. It's a payroll protection loan that's up to $10 million with a fixed rate of 1% interest. When it was launched, it was at 0.5%. Now it's a fixed rate of 1% interest rate, and it matures in 2 years. So it's a great tool that we're working on with our private sectors and with the bankers. When the application goes into the bank, the banker then puts it into E-Tran. E-Tran is it's an account that lenders must use for these applications, and they funnel it into the E-Tran portal that helps them get the thing processed. And the banker can be approved in that day. I might say the application, there's several components to it. It's lender information, like the name of the business, the EIN number. They're asking for loan structure at the 2.5% monthly. You take your monthly payroll, you multiply by 2.5%, and that's the amount of loan that you're asking for. There's a forgiveness part, and then you can also use about 25% of that for your mortgage interest and electrical bills and other smaller things, up to about 25%. There's general eligibility questions. There's questions on certificate of eligibility. If you're a franchise or licensee, you qualify. They're asking for a character determination that you got to have at least 20% ownership of the business, and then any prior loss to government or delinquent federal debt. And these are yes or no questions, and this is all to be certified by the banking official. And then he submits it and signs it, and we hope we get in the system. But I've got to tell you, we found that our E-Tran system has crashed a few times because of the number of loans applications that are going in. But we are seeing quick results that's being reported to us across the country. We have 66 SBA district offices that are working on this thing daily and trying to get these monies out to our clients. All I ask is that we all be patient. It's brand new. This is something we've never experienced before. We're trying to make sure that our businesses continue to function and that we don't paralyze our economic system of our country. So with that, Secretary, I'll stand for any kind of questions as we go through this, and be glad to entertain them. Thank you, ma'am.
Great. Russell, why don't you go ahead and do your presentation, and then we'll open up for questions.
All right, very good. I'm Russell Wyrick. I'm going to talk very quickly because of time. So I've got boots on the ground across the state. We've already processed, gone through applying hundreds of these loan applications. So we're be able to give you a really on the ground perspective here. So you've got 4 programs in place primarily: the EIDL, the SBA Bridge Loan, the Paycheck Protection, and the SBA Debt Relief. Let's forward. So let's talk about the Paycheck Protection. And what you need to understand, this is through the 7A program, which is a loan guarantee. So when you're borrowing money, you're getting it from the lender, from a bank. Whereas when we talk about the EIDL, that's coming straight from the SBA. So 2 different processes there, and it's pretty key in understanding. This is to help small businesses with payroll. It's a temporary program that's going to be available through June 30th. The SBA is going to forgive those PPP loans if the employees are kept on payroll for 8 weeks and you use it for payroll, rent, mortgage, interest, and utilities. You'll be able to apply through the 7A lenders or through any federal insured depository institution, credit union, farm system, and others that register. What's important for you to understand is this is moving so fast. The lenders and the final lender rule guidance is still a work in progress. If you go into a bank today in New Mexico and you ask for this loan, they may not know how to answer your questions or assist. They may take your application, but I could shoot straight with you. It's a work in progress. They're moving as fast as they can. So imagine the rules come out from the SBA, then those banks have to process that information and their staff has to be trained. Decisions have to be made. Are they going to choose to make these loans? So just be prepared today, this launch today, but be patient. Your lender will move as fast as they can. They may not be ready, okay? But they're supposed to, it's open today. Next slide. Okay, very good. So who's available? This is for any business with 500 employees or less. This includes sole proprietors and independent contractors and self-employed and private nonprofit organizations, 501c, veterans organizations, etc. Businesses, if you're in a certain industry, you have more than 500 employees, you still may qualify because size standards and some they vary. So if you exceed that, if you exceed 500, don't give up. You want to check with the SBA website to see if you still qualify as a small business, okay? Let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so we skipped one, but again, can we go back one? Let's try going back one.
Hey, Russell, this is Joanna. There's a little bit of a delay on the slide, so I'm apologizing about that. So just FYI, you can go ahead and talk and I'll click on it.
No problem, okay. So the loan will be forgiven if the funds are used for payroll cost, interest, mortgage, rents, and then again, they're expecting due to the high subscription, at least 75% of the forgiven amount is going to have to be used on payroll. That's again what they're expecting. They'll defer these payments for 6 months. They've also waived, the CARES Act waived the collateral or personal, there's no collateral or personal guarantees required on these PPPs. Neither the government nor lenders are going to charge any small business fees, okay? The forgiveness is based on you maintaining and quickly rehiring your employees and maintaining those salary levels. Forgiveness will be reduced if your full-time headcount declines or if salaries and wages decrease. So just be prepared. You borrow it. If you cut their salaries or your headcount declines, it's going to decrease what you can get forgiven. And it matures in 2 years at an interest rate of 1%. Let's move forward. So if you want to begin preparing the application, you can go to the SBA website and download it. And again, it's brand new. These things are changing rapidly. The form you see today probably will not be the form you see on Monday, and it will probably not be the form you see on Wednesday. So we're seeing that many changes. So I would use the form to gather the information that you need to go to your lender, and then your lender will help you with that process in getting this applied. Move forward. Okay, the SBA Bridge Loans. This is if you already have a relationship with the SBA Express lender, this would be one you could rapidly apply for. Let's move forward. SBA Debt Relief. Now, if you have a 7A loan, 504 loan, if you have something currently already in place prior to this disaster, then you can work with them to get those loans, the principal and interest automatically paid for 6 months. And then also the fees, interest and new fees loans issued prior to September 27th, 2020. So they are doing some assistance. Next slide. All right, let's talk about EIDL. This is important. I want you to think of EIDL as 2 different programs now. It's not, but I want you to think of it that way. Okay, so the thing we're going to talk about first is the EIDL loan advance, the economic injury disaster loan. This is a loan advance of up to $10,000 for businesses that are currently experiencing loss due to this virus situation. Everybody's eligible, and all the states are eligible, all the service areas. The goal is this will be made within 3 days of a successful application is when you get this advance. Now, to be clear, when they passed the CARES Act, the SBA administrator in DC had 15 days to do guidance. So technically that's not until April 11th. So you may apply. We don't know whether that 3-day window will be hit right now, but as of April 11th, they'd be late if they don't hit it. So just prepping you. If you've already applied, you haven't gotten the advance. It's again, we're waiting for the everything to catch up. That advance does not have to be repaid. And for the payments, and we'll get to that, I'm going to skip that deferred for 12 months. That's on my next slide. So move forward. So any small business with less than 500 employees, including sole proprietors, independent contractors, self-employed persons, et cetera, are eligible for this. If you have more than 500, again, check it. And the funds, again, will be made available within 3 days. So let's move forward to the next slide. So what we're saying for the EIDL right now, if you're a small business, like most of in New Mexico, your EIDL is your best lane right now. If you have not applied, get in line, applied for that, get the $10,000 advance. That's going to provide you immediate assistance. You can qualify for, eligible entities can qualify for up to $2 million. The interest rate is 3.75 for small business and 2.75 for nonprofit, and it provides repayment terms of 30 years. This is huge, and I want you to understand this from an entrepreneurial business perspective, okay? If you get a PPP loan, okay, and you're using it for things other than payroll, you're going to have stuff that's not going to be forgiven, and you're going to be on a loan term that is maybe 5-10 years or less, okay? The key here is with this a 30-year payment term. When you look at the difference between a 30 years to pay it back and 5 years to pay it back, your payment is going to be huge. So for many of you, an EIDL loan is going to be your best option if you're a small business and it's not all payroll that you're dealing with. The bulk of what you're dealing with is debts and expenses, and payroll is minimal. So be sure to check on that, and the SBDCs can help. And again, the payments are deferred for the first 12 months. So you won't have to do it. Next slide. So you can use this for working capital, the EIDL I'm talking about, working capital to pay your fixed debt, to pay your payroll, to pay accounts payable, or to pay bills you could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. These are not designed or intended to replace lost sales, profit, or for expansion. So the design of this is really to help you keep that business functional, keep those bills paid, as what you're doing for this. Let's go forward. Okay, so the application is really simple. I'm not going to take you through the application process. It should take you about 30 minutes. So let's just either zip through these slides or let's skip. They'll do an eligible entity verification. You're going to select one of these items. So this is exactly what you see on the screen when you apply. Let's keep going. You just keep click as fast as you can go here. So yeah, we may need to slip these slides because of the animations. So all right, perfect. So what you're going to select your business type, your name, your gross revenues will go in there. When it asks for cost of goods sold, what we're encouraging, they're asking for your total expenses. So that may throw you off a little bit, but be prepared. Keep going. But you can see it's a very simple application. All right, you're going to choose your business activity. Once you choose that business activity, like there, it's going to pull a sub list. You'll select your business from that sub list. Let's keep going. Then they're going to ask if it's owned by a business-owned entity, your title, name, etc. Keep going. Social Security name, etc. State. And then if there's additional owners, you'd click there. Let's go to the next page. So again, you can see it's a very simple format now. Okay, then additional information. Keep going. All right, the top section that will only apply if that top section will only apply if someone helped you complete the form. So if you have someone walking you someone who's walking you through step by step, put this in this section, etc., you'd fill that. Otherwise, you don't. Then go back one more, because there's an important thing you need to click on there. Very important, that box at the bottom. Check this box to request a $10,000 advance grant. So you'll want to click that box. That will put you in the queue to give you basically the $10,000 you don't have to pay back. Move forward. Okay, then what they're going to do is they're going to ask for your bank's routing number, and people may get leery about this, but the reason why they're asking for this is because they're going to send that $10,000 through direct debit to your bank. They can't, again, you just imagine trying to cut paper checks as many in the tens of thousands they're going to have to do. So just be prepared. They'll want your bank routing number. And we've been getting questions. Again, people are a little leery, but just again, that's what they're going to get on the form. Continue. Okay, you'll have to check this. This is a self-certification process. So that means, again, this whole approval process now is based on self-certification. So you're just basically saying that what you put on here will be used for, etc., and you're certifying that, and that's basically for this the approval process currently. Move forward. Okay, and on this next screen, switch to slides for me. This one right here is what you're going to get. It'll give you a chance to edit sections. You'll have to do that, not a robot verification on your computer. You click submit, and then you're going to get this. Go ahead and click the button so it will pull up. If you look right there, you're going to see your application number. You need to write that down, and you need to keep an eye on it. Click for the next build. You want to avoid scams, and you need to be very cautious because there are a lot going on right now. And so that means when you're getting any communication from the SBA, they're going to refer to that application number. So if you get someone from the SBA saying, thank you for your application, could you send us your tax return? Don't send them your tax returns unless they're referring to the application number, because you want to make sure it's actually the SBA you're communicating with. Let's go to the next slide. So getting assistance, there's 4 SBA resource partners in the state. Of course, New Mexico SBDC, our West, SCORE, and VBOC. We're all here to assist you. Let's move forward. Okay, I want you to avoid scams and fraud schemes, so I want you to be very cautious on this. If someone contacts you preemptively to say, oh, I can get you approved for an SBA loan, and they want you to pay the money up front, you need to suspect fraud. It doesn't work that way, okay? So just be cautious. If someone says, oh, you give us some money and we'll help you get the loan, be very careful. If you're applying for the loan, you get an email asking for your personal identifiable information. You need to make sure that application number is listed. You need to look out for phishing scams that use the SBA logo, because they may be an attempt to get your, don't assume because it has the logo on it that it is from the SBA. We just have to be extra careful these days because emergencies cause people to take advantage of people. All right, any email communication from the SBA is going to come from accounts that end in SBA.gov. Okay, you want to watch for that. If it's not coming from SBA.gov, you're not talking to the SBA, okay? The other thing here would be beware of any email or website ending in SBA.help. We're already seeing scams where people are getting emails from SBA.help, but that is not the SBA. So just be aware of that. Let's move to the next slide. So getting assistance in New Mexico SBDC, I have a full dispatch center set up. I've got 6 full-time admins that are processing requests that come in to get you to an advisor as rapidly as possible. I have my advisors across the state. They're all working remotely, working 16-hour days, 6 days a week right now to process all the requests that we're getting. They will help you in a couple ways. So you can get no cost one-on-one business counseling via phone, web conference, or email. So if you're wanting to apply to one of these loans, they all have Zoom. We can log you in. We can share screen. We can walk you through the application together. We can provide direct assistance for your specific need. We can help you any of the applications. We can one-on-one walk you through that. That's why we exist. The other thing we've got is the no-cost live webinar trainings on these SBA programs that are starting, right? All of them. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be offering live webinar trainings like I just gave, live every single day, 6 days, well, 6 days a week, repeated over and over again. So I'll have an economic injury disaster loan. That training will probably start on Monday every day at 9 a.m. that you can register for. There's no cost for it, but I'll eventually have an entire series probably by the end of next week that you can go on and register. So if you want to know more about the PPP loan, we'll take you all the way through it, the application process, everything in specific details. To register for counseling or training, what you're going to do is you're going to go to nmsbdc.org. So if you go to nmsbdc.org, right on the top of the page, you're going to see a bright red to click here. for applying for a loan or for assistance. If you click on that, that's going to take you in the queue to register. You just fill out that information to register. You'll be in the queue. A dispatcher will then be calling you as soon as possible to find out the details that you need, and then we will assign a business advisor that is specifically skilled for your business situation and what you need, and then we'll the one-on-one counseling to help you do whatever you need for your business. So again, thank you very much, and I believe that is the end of my slides.
Russell, John, thank you so much.
You bet. Madam Secretary, one quick thing I just want to highlight. The SBDC is a strong resource partner with the SBA. They're handling a lot of our clients. They're helping them with the process. They're extremely helpful to us, along with Wes is managing our women business centers. SCORE is doing a lot of outreach, as well as our Veteran Business Outreach Center. So there's a cadre of resource partners out there. I just want to highlight to our listening audience and those that work within the state government. So don't hesitate to call any one of our resource partners, most particularly the 18 SBDC centers that are out there. Thank you again.
Okay, we're going to open it up to a few questions right now before we move on to our Community Santa Fe Grants Program. So one second, let me bring this up. Okay, John and Russell, if our staff have already been receiving unemployment, will there be a problem putting them back on payroll if we are approved for PPP?
You want to take that, Russell?
Yes, I can. And so that is real. There is an unknown between the unemployment and these loans. And so that is a question we do not have an answer for, but Secretary McCamley may have some more insight on that shortly. But again, because and this is mostly in regards to unemployment rules. So that means based on unemployment rules, when you have other income coming in, you may hit a threshold where you aren't eligible for unemployment. So again, there's an interaction. We have the same questions we're getting about the EIDL $10,000 grant. If you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor and you apply for that $10,000 grant, you've got 10 grand in your bank account now. Now you go to apply for unemployment. Is that going to impact you having to wait for eligibility? We don't know those answers yet, but that would be a great question for workforce on that item.
Okay, great. We will have Joanna look that up and talk to Bill and post it on our website. Next question is, what is the term allowed to spend the money from PPP?
What they have up into a max of 2 years, but they've got to file. If they're looking to get forgiveness on this loan, they've got until June the 30th to file. A lot of companies, if they don't file to have the loan forgiven because they're paying 100% of the payroll, and they're using the monies for something else, well, then they've got 2 years to pay this loan down. But as long as they can provide proof that they paid the employment for their employees, and they can also rehire their employees back on board back to March the 15th. And so there is a 2-year time period to pay it down, but they've got to June the 30th to make sure they bring their employees on board and they pay that salary.
And for the EIDL, there is not a requirement on the EIDL for spending that out in a certain period.
No, and that's that $10,000 advance. The only thing with the EIDL is that some people are being approved for the EIDL of $10,000, and then they're trying to get approved for the Paycheck Protection Program, and they can't get both. They only get one. So some are hanging on to the $10,000 been approved until they see if their Paycheck Protection gets approved, and then they take the Paycheck Protection. So keep in mind that it's not perfect yet. There are some holes in it, and I think everyone upstairs back in DC realize it, and there will be some additional changes. This thing will probably change again as we're talking.
Okay, so I just want to clarify for people. So businesses can apply for both, but they're only going to receive either the PPP or the EIDL. Is that correct?
Well, let me add some clarification on. Here's the challenge. The EIDL is a little different, and so if you apply for the EIDL can be refinanced into a PPP. So you can get the idle and then go to a bank and refinance that idle into the PPP. You technically can have an idle and a PPP, but
That's correct.
They contrast. So in other words, so let's say I get the $10,000 idle advance. So I get 10 grand. Then I go apply for the PPP. All right. What the SBA is going to do is the $10,000 advance grant that I got, they're going to deduct that from the forgivable portion of the PPP. So you're not double dipping. But in theory, you can have both, but you can't double dip, if that makes sense. But you could have an idle, you could have a PPP, but you're not going to be able to get the whatever the idle comes off is going to be offset of the forgiveness that is on that PPP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's correct. They'll subtract they'll subtract the 10,000 from the PPP if they do it like that.
But you find out whether or not you get the idle first. Is that correct?
Right.
Well,
yeah, we're telling people apply for the idle, but we're also saying if you're going to go apply for the PPP, then let's see if you get the PPP first. But if they get the idle first, it's like Russell said, it's one or the other. If you get the idle first, and then you get the PPP approved, the PPP will be the 10 grand will be deducted from that PPP.
Right. So if this will make sense, let's say I'm going to apply for the idle for $200,000. Okay, I want 200 grand loan. I go and apply for the idle for 200,000. I get a $10,000 advance on that. So I have 10 grand of that. That's a grant I don't have to pay back. That should happen within 3 days. Now the idle loan application, that's why I said think of it as two different things. The idle loan application is still in play, and it may take them 3 to 4 weeks to approve that. Okay, so the 190,000 remaining on that application, it may be 3 to 4 weeks before I know they're going to approve that or decline that. What we're telling businesses is go ahead and apply for the idle so you're in line for that grant. Now, in the 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, if you do qualify, so if the SBA comes back to you and says, hey, you've been approved for this, you have a choice. You can take the loan, the actual loan or not. So that means you can say, you know what, I'm not going to take it because I'm going to take this PPP, or I've already taken the PPP. And the other key here, understand about the advance is not contingent on you being approved for the loan. So the idle. So if you apply for the idle, you get the $10,000 advance. If 3 weeks later they say you don't qualify for the idle loan, you still got the $10,000 advance you don't have to pay back. So that $10,000 advance is not contingent on you later being approved for the idle loan.
Yeah, though on the application on item D, it's going to ask you refinance of an eligible economic injury disaster loan and the net advance that was given. And that will be indicated on the application.
Okay, we have another question. Can that help pay for supplies?
So it's a bit tricky. It depends on what you mean. What you mean by that. If you're talking about the PPP, that's probably dangerous territory. Okay. If you're talking about the idle, again, they've got the stipulations of items. It's really designed to help you to buy. If you have like a bill for supplies you've got to pay, I'm saying it gets tricky. I'd be very cautious on the PPP for using it for supplies. But the idle, it's going to depend on your business type, specific business type, and what you mean by supplies. That would be a great question to call the New Mexico SBDC. Talk with an advisor. So register through the site. The advisor will hear your specific industry, look at your finance to figure out what you mean by supplies to process through that with you. But that's a great example of a question to reach out to us for.
Great. We're going to have 2 more questions, and then we'll have just 2 very quick presentations on grants, and then we'll go back to questions. How does an applicant check on their application?
Did you say the 7A?
How does an applicant check on the status of their application?
Okay, so
which application, the idle or the PPP?
That's both.
If they're checking on the idle application, it's the 1-800 number I gave out earlier, 1-800-659-2955. And as Russell mentioned, they will assign you an application number, and that's your gold ticket. Whatever you refer to, whatever you email, write, and or call, you use that application number in that discussion with the Disaster Assistance Office, that 1-800-659-2955. And again, too, as Russell stated, you can contact his staff and they can probably call that number as well and try to assist in finding out the information. We've been doing that with clients, and we're getting through. As I mentioned earlier, they hired 7,000 more people to assist on those calls. So that's the number that we're referring everybody to.
And for the PPP, you would talk to your lender. So
exactly.
The EIDL's directly to the SBA. The PPP is your banker that's authorized to do these SBA PPP loans.
Okay, great.
One quick thing, Secretary Keys, on the application with the lender, once the funding is given to the client from the lender, it's up to the lender then to decide whether or not to make this a waive the loan and turn it into forgiveness. And he's got 60 days time frame to make that decision once the client provides all the adequate information that the lender is requesting.
Okay, our next question is, we are a small business that uses paychecks, HR, and payroll services under a PEO. Will this affect our ability to apply for CARES?
Russell, can you answer that?
That is a very tricky question, and we would need to get the details. So the question that's going to get into details again of technically whose employees are they. So if they are your employees and you are legally responsible for them, and you're just using a paycheck company to issue the paychecks and withhold taxes or whatever, then yeah. If you're dealing with the scenario where you're leasing employees and they're technically not your employees, they're on somebody else's, you're paying one big lump sum payment company to a temp agency, and the temp agency is paying that person's individual paycheck. So what you'll need to do is, again, get in touch with the SBDC for your specific business for that type of question.
Okay, great. I think, Joanna, we're going to go ahead and move on to 1 second, and then we'll come back to more questions. If we have, perfect, Bill Smith from the Santa Fe Community Foundation, and he's going to talk about the All Together New Mexico Fund.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bill Smith. I promise to be quite brief because I know we're a bit over time. Let me start by thanking the extraordinary leadership of our governor, Secretary Keys. Thanks for letting me briefly talk about the philanthropic response today. And I also want to acknowledge that Dan Schlegel in the governor's office, who's the small business advisor, has been working closely with us on the piece of the fund that I'm going to talk about today. So as you've heard from the other presentations this afternoon, there's unprecedented responses happening all over our state in order to respond to this crisis. And that is very much true on the part of the nonprofit sector, in particular, watching what has gone on to ensure that people have access to food and healthcare services in our state has been extraordinary. And I say that as one of the foundations in our state that is the largest and funds the nonprofit sector. I also wanted to share that there's been a significant and unprecedented response from the philanthropic sector in our state and the foundations that are involved in that, and the many generous folks who just continue to give. There have been many local response funds set up across our state, including at our foundation, at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. We have a local response fund. The same is true for our sister community foundations in Taos and in Las Cruces and in Albuquerque. So there's a lot happening at the state level, but it also became clear that there were a number of people who wanted to give into a more statewide effort. And we have seen these statewide COVID-19 response funds emerge in many, many states in order to tap into the philanthropic power to help us get through this crisis. So all that is to say that over the last week or so, we have been working with staff in the governor's office, again, primarily Dan Schlegel and Caroline Burkle, and our sister community foundations in Taos, Albuquerque, and the Community Foundation of Southern New Mexico in Las Cruces to launch the All Together New Mexico Fund. We launched the fund last week, on Thursday of last week. We had 1.1 million in committed contributions into the fund. We continue to raise money. For those of you who are on the phone and have philanthropic connections, please direct them to altogether.newmexico.org. It will allow them to make those contributions, and the link is up on the slide on the webinar now. What I wanted to share with this group is we have been working to figure out how to do a grants program for very small micro businesses, that is employees with businesses with employees under five and under. So the clay is still soft on this. We're figuring out grant amounts. We have some really excellent guidance from the Small Business Development Center that just had presented. We're thinking they're going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000. But what we know is that it's these very small businesses that sometimes are loath to take on a loan along the lines of what we just saw. I think there's no reason that they should feel that way. Of course, there's lots of flexibility that we're seeing in the availability of those loans and the forgiveness of loans. But still, there is a mindset among many small businesses that a loan is not something they're willing to take on. So we're looking to use the Altogether New Mexico Fund as a grant-making program to those small businesses to help them weather the storm and to keep their employees and to be able to pay some other operating expenses until we emerge from this. So with that, Secretary Keys, I'll just stop. I just wanted to say that this had been created, and we will be announcing the grants program probably in the next week or two. As I said, we're still collecting money and don't want to prematurely put out a grant application when we don't have a lot of resources in. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Bill. Joanna, do you just really quickly want to touch on the Department of Finance?
Sure, thank you, Secretary Keys. I'm filling in for Donnie Quintana, who is the Division Director for the Local Government Division for DFA. And he wasn't able to join the call, so he will be on our webinar coming up on the 13th, where we will go into detail about community development resources. CDBG is the acronym for Community Development Block Grant. They were able to secure around $1 million to provide small business grants to areas that normally qualify under HUD's regulations about being a distressed economic area or a low-income area. Businesses that are in these areas will be able to qualify for a small business grant. They will be able to reach out and work with their Council of Governments to identify and apply. And the process on this application is still being inked, as many of these programs are. But the idea for this webinar is to put it out there that this funding source will be available and coming online very soon, hopefully in the next coming week. And you can find out more on that webinar on the 13th.
Great, thanks, Joanna. We have a lot of really fabulous questions that are coming through, but they're pretty specific. So definitely reached out to John Garcia and Russell. Actually, Joanna, if you'll go back to their numbers, that would be fantastic, because I think a lot of the questions that we're going to be getting from today's seminars are regarding that. One general question for the SBA and the SBDC, Russell and John, do you have your materials in Spanish?
I have access to materials in Spanish, so if needed, regarding the EIDL loan, and I'll check out real quick on the Paycheck Protection Program. We can get that out. Would you like us to send that to you, or I can send them through Russell, and the SBDC can disseminate that throughout their 18 centers?
We're happy to help wherever, so you can send it through to us and the SBDC. Thank you all for participating in this webinar. I realized that we ran a little bit over time. Please reach out to the Economic Development Division. Please reach out to the SBDC and the SBA. We are here to help you specifically with specific questions. I do know that our information is also being translated right now into Spanish, so we will have that available to people. Check our website, as Joanna said. When is our next webinar, Joanna?
It's on April 13th. That's a Monday, and it's at 11 o'clock. And
Great.
the link to register will be in this presentation. Everyone will get that.
And also remember to fill out your census today, right now. Please, thank you. We all need to be counted, and stay safe. Thank you all.